And welcome back to a fresh episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, co-owner over at webchoiceuk.com. And if you haven't done so yet, check out my weekly email where I share actionable B2B marketing tips, website ideas, free goodies, resources, and more each and every Monday to kick off your week with a bang. Why not give it a try over at businessgrowth.emails. So joining me today, I've got Aamer Hasu, who's the head of marketing over at Vainu. Aamer, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Sam. I'm doing well. How are you?
All good, man. Looking forward to today's episode. We're going to be talking about something that probably frustrates the hell out of marketers, the C-suite, the business owners, is why you shouldn't ignore your CRM, something that I know sales reps absolutely love to ignore. In fact, they'd probably rather spend their time talking to customers, ignoring it, filling out that data all day. So yeah, it should be a spicy one, man. So first and foremost, why is updating a CRM? Why is your CRM in general so important when it comes to B2B and marketing?
Well, I mean, the adoption rate of CRM is growing all the time. The amount of data in CRM is growing all the time. And probably the reason is that these days, there's so much data available to use in sales and marketing, and you need a system that's able to integrate to data providers, marketing automation tools, ABM tools. And that's probably the biggest reason why CRM is so popular. I mean, back in the day, CRM was basically just a place where you mark things, you put your notes there. But I think these days CRMs are kind of interconnected, integrated business systems that really are a centerpiece of sales and marketing at companies.
And do you think B2B companies that really want to scale, really want to grow, can get away with the old school mindset? Because still, whilst I'm a marketer, I do a lot of selling as well. So I'm a kind of sales rep at heart, as I do a lot of the deals here at WebChoice, and I love talking to customers. So every time CRM comes into my mind, I think, oh, that's the place where the inquiries through the website feed through. That's the place where you'll update the current status of the latest, like the deal flow with the customer, how far along the pipeline it is. But from what you've shared there, it sounds like we should be using it for so much more. As a kind of tool, do you think businesses can get away with it just using it, like I said, now, or do you think it's much more important to use it in the wider focus?
Well, of course, it all depends on your business goals.
Sure.
If you have a very steady business and you don't really need the information or want to grow or expand, then probably you can do it as you've always done. But we have there's so many ways of doing sales and marketing, and there's just purely the amount of data you can use to do different things. It just opens up so many possibilities, and also like for the salesperson, but I understand if a salesperson goes to the CRM and there's like 40 fields in the CRM, like
Yeah.
that you don't need, like addresses and there's weird things. But what if a CRM could, like, you go to a CRM, you go to a company view or account view, and you only see the most relevant things, like this company just received funding. This company size is, let's say, mid-sized company, and some other, like a few attributes here and there that really help the salesperson give the information that they need to do sales work better. So I understand if you have 40 properties there, 40 fields, and you don't like this, okay, where's the phone number? I just need the phone number. But if it has helpful information for the salesperson, then also the salesperson can benefit a lot from it.
Yeah. With your organization, Aamer, or any ones that you've kind of seen or worked with, have you had any ways in which you've helped encourage the sales team to update the CRM? Because I know from my experience, even our own team, they absolutely hate doing it. And sometimes you've just got to nag the reps to get it done. It's like, what's the latest? I need to know what the latest is on these deals, on these leads. And it's always one of those things that'll lead to the end of the month or the end of the day or the end of the week.
Well, one point of view is that maybe salespeople shouldn't update the CRM. For example, you can set up all the sort of data enrichment parts so that they don't need to input the basic details there. When they prospect for new companies, all the details will be there automatically. And obviously you have tools like Gong these days that can that record your sales meetings and even transcribe them and add them to the CRM. So the point is that maybe we should get away from this mindset that it's only for salespeople to add information to, just to report, so that the higher ups can know what's happening within the sales team, and just make it a system that helps the salesperson and also benefits the company in knowing what's really happening, so that the companies can be what they call data driven.
Yeah, let's talk about it in a sec. I'm sure a lot of salespeople, if they are tuning into this, their eyes have probably lit up. They're like, what? That can actually be done. But I don't need to spend like hours at the end of each week just typing all this data up, which is just, most of it just mundane stuff. But yeah, like you say, if you can find tools like Gong or similar to record those calls and update information, it's going to save a lot of time and hassles, I'm sure. So why is it important that the businesses are data driven, in your thoughts?
Probably because the speed and the scale of how things move these days. That's one of the biggest reasons. If you're doing things manually, planning campaigns manually, it's going to take a lot of time, and efficiency is the thing that we want these days.
Right.
But there's also a problem with if we talk about companies that say that we're data driven. What that actually means is if you take it to its rawest form, it means that you're actually placing or making all your decisions based on the data you have. So you're using very little intuition, and you're like basing like, okay, this customer segment is growing, so we need to, or this is a very good customer segment for us, a prospect segment for us. We need to really hit and go after those companies. But what happens if the data is like 71% correct or 68% correct, and you're basing your decisions on that data? It can really turn it against you.
Interesting. So this is a bit of a tough one, but in your experience for say a B2B technology organization or B2B SaaS company, are there specific things that you should always be measuring? Are there like 5 things, without measuring these, you're basically missing out on revenue?
5 things.
Or it could be less, or it could be more.
So the things you should be measuring based on the CRM data, we're talking about like metrics for growth, or just like, well, obviously, like these days, lifetime value is a very important thing. I mean, I wouldn't just like, I wouldn't just rely on like how much business will we create in the next quarter, but also take into account that how can we develop these accounts, through upselling and really make the lifetime value as high as possible. And obviously, when you measure things on lifetime value, you can really see, you can even base your ICP, your ideal customer profile, on that. What are the customers that ultimately generate most revenue over time for us?
Yeah,
that's one. I guess in the SaaS business, ARR growth always important, but I'm sure there are other ones as well.
Yeah. So looking at lifetime values, looking at kind of how profitable or the most profitable customers that are currently clients, looking at annual recurring revenue, those kind of things. And you mentioned something interesting just now, Aamer. You're saying you use the percentages of data to actually make decisions. So tell us a bit more about like how you do that, and what you should be considering, and what kind of percentage weighs how a decision should be made.
Well, that was more like a philosophical thought that can you be like, do you want to rely on data that's not complete? But you could do an exercise. You could look at your CRM, all the accounts or companies or organizations that are in there. And you can see like, do you have industry data on all companies, or size or location? Is the data complete?
Right.
And if it's like, I mean, that's easy. Then you could theoretically calculate a percentage. And then you could say like, okay, we have a pretty good database. We can really calculate our sort of our TAM, or our like the market that we can sell to.
Yeah.
and those sorts of things. But that's like more philosophical. But that the point was there that make sure that it's clean, the data is clean before you start making decisions based on that.
Yeah. And are there any ideas? Because I'm a bit of I understand data on the basic level, but I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to kind of the finer details, as maths isn't my strong point. But when you say kind of keeping your data clean, keeping it up to date, are there any kind of best practices around that businesses should consider?
Well, let's look at it from the perspective of the salesperson. Let's say that in an optimal situation, the company has defined the ideal customer profile. That's very clear. We go after, let's say, companies in this industry, in these locations, roughly this size, that might use some certain technologies. Like if you're selling, chatbots, it's beneficial to know what kind of chatbots companies use. Have they received funding recently? Have they been through mergers and acquisitions?
Yep.
And when you've got all that cleared, then it's really easy to populate your CRM with all the companies in your target market. And then you have all the necessary details of each company, and then you can just split it. Okay, your sales team takes this bunch of companies.
Got it.
Your sales team takes this bunch of companies. And then when the salespeople go to the CRM, it's full of what they see is the relevant information that's relevant for them. Let's say like you're an expert on companies that have recently gone through mergers. So you're like, okay, I can work with these companies. So kind of like starting from the fundamentals and making sure that what the salespeople see in the CRM is relevant for them and their work.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're getting into now setting up a CRM for almost like an account-based marketing play, where you're working out the accounts that you want to tap into, or that you want your sales team to start getting into, and then putting those details that are most important, like you say, if you're targeting companies that have recently got a round of funding, and then there's other bits and pieces that you want to know that might be useful intel when you're going out and prospecting them cold, whether that's over the phone or email or serving content to them or ads or things like that. What might be quite fun, Aamer, is if there's like a step-by-step play that you like to do from kind of doing those things we just mentioned, or maybe even before that, really, when it comes to kind of thinking of the key fields that you should put in the CRM, and then how you map out those ideal client profile accounts, and then what you do before you pass it off to sales.
So you want me to describe the sort of ideal process?
A recommended process, a little step-by-step might be quite fun.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you mentioned something about ABM. That sounds like an ABM approach. It probably is. I think that why sort of wouldn't you use a sort of ABM type of approach? There's lots of definitions. I think if you look at LinkedIn, there's lots of definitions that people arguing about what's the definition of ABM. But the fact is that you can't do marketing to all the companies in the world. Your salespeople can't be calling all the companies in the world. Wouldn't it be better to focus on a specific set of accounts anyway and prioritize them based on some sort of change that has happened in that company?
Yeah.
Let's say like they received funding, or they just opened up a new branch, like in Bristol, for example. And then just like I have the ICP, and then I'm going to prioritize based on when is the right time to sell to these companies. It's pretty easy. If you ask your customers sort of what was the sort of situation that you were going through when you decided to buy our service, and then they start talking and explaining things. So that gives you a lot of valuable qualitative data. Doesn't always have to be like massive amounts of spreadsheets or data sheets. It could just be data is also talking to people and recording that.
Yeah, I like that.
But the sort of framework, well, I kind of talked about it before, but it starts with the ICP definition, and then you recognize the accounts. You have everything in your CRM. you enrich the CRM with the accounts you need, and then you divide those accounts to the right salespeople, and you prioritize those accounts based on recent changes that has happened in those companies. And then the outreach, of course, is well, here at Vainu, we have the same method. I mean, my marketing budget, basically, if we talk about ads, is mostly spent on LinkedIn, and I target the exact same accounts as my salespeople or our salespeople go after. So we have like we have many ways of approaching the companies that we feel that most benefit out of our services.
Yeah. That, I love that question. So you mentioned something earlier, like you're asking your existing clients what was going on when you realized you had a problem, or you realized there was an issue you need to fix, or you had this frustration, and then you reached out to us and you knew that you need to fix this problem, you need to inquire about our services or take up our product. How are you then leveraging that as data? Like what kind of key points would you take from that would then influence the CRM data and then pass off to sales, or also influence the marketing you put out? Like, how do you piece those things together?
Well, I would do it in batches. I mean, if you have like 1,000 customers, it's pretty difficult to ask them, but and they might not remember. But I would have a simple process of in the onboarding, or it actually might be too late at the stage where the customer basically signs the contract. Say, okay, let's start this thing. Then I would actually have like a quick interview. Well, it doesn't have to be an interview. You can just ask them. It takes 5 minutes to ask them a few questions about, why did they choose us? Were they considering some alternatives? But the main thing is that, so what was happening in your company? Was there, sometimes it's not anything. It's like, okay, the salesperson approached me and it seemed like a good fit. So we need this, but there's usually some sort of pain or business problem that they're trying to solve. So recording that as well is important. And then you can have like I would recommend adding it, of course, in the CRM as a field in the company or the person. And then at some point, it's easy to sort of export. These are the accounts we won last quarter, and these are the reasons why they chose us. And these were the things the changes that were happening within their industry, or maybe it was like a macro change, like something happening in the world that affected this. And then you can analyze it with your sales and marketing team and use that data to improve it.
Nice. How do you leverage those problems, those frustrations that you get from those interviews? So let's say there's a common pain point that is really often coming up. A lot of customers say that's the reason when they reached out to you. How do you then use that to your advantage?
Well, at least in marketing, we can change the messaging, and obviously because we know the companies we're going after, because we have the account list and we're doing marketing towards the same account list, and I can see, okay, these are the similar companies. These are similar companies that most likely have a similar problem as these companies that just signed with us. So I can change the messaging towards those companies. I can have a podcast episode about it, or do some video clips where I interview experts, or even those customers about like the problems we solved. So that is one way of doing it. And obviously, same thing for sales. Even in the initial outreach, you can change the pitch a bit to suit this. So finding sort of lookalikes based on data you get from current customers, and sometimes you can ask, okay, how do you find the companies from those? Let's say you have like 10,000 target accounts. How do you find like the companies that would most likely be experiencing similar problems? Well, obviously, you can use company data, like from an external provider, for example, from Vainu. I mean, if we take the naive example of the merger, so we went through a merger last year, and they say that the customer says that we just went through a merger and it caused the X and Y problems, and that's why we bought from you. So then you could look up which companies have had recent mergers or opened up new locations or anything like that. So find similarities from the prospect pool, and then change the messaging in marketing and in sales to sort of suit that.
Yeah. So it's basically almost getting this data from your customers right now, then using it to your advantage, looking for how those problems, those frustrations they came to you with, can then be put together in content that you can then serve up to your focus accounts. But then you can also look for lookalike accounts by using data, by finding companies, whether they've, like you said, they've just got a merger, they just had funding, or they've just had something similar that was the causer of this problem, to get more customers that are going to basically ramp up revenue and be profitable for just like the other clients you just onboarded. Really makes sense.
And over time, I mean, I think in the beginning you might have these long answers like that you're adding to the CRM on the company, some field there. But I think over time you'll start to see patterns. And then there might be like a few common ones.
Yep.
And then it's easy to create a pick list in the CRM, like, okay, it was this reason. And then when you have pick lists, you can easily export or analyze those companies, because you can just say, get me these companies that correspond to this pick list option. And then you can say, okay, these are the 200 or let's say 20 companies or 30 companies or 100 companies. And okay, let's find similar companies. Well, let's see what's in common with them, and let's find more.
Easy as that.
It sounds very easy, but it can be. But what it actually requires is that vigorous. It has to be a rigorous and vigorous maybe process. Like, it's so easy to forget this. I mean, as a salesperson, when you get the contract signed, asking these questions might not be the first things in your mind. There's obviously lots of things you have to think about.
Sure.
Maybe celebrate a bit, but let's get that.
Go to the pub, then start the project, do the onboarding, then ask the questions in that order.
But it could be like, if we go to like the CRM level again, how to leverage CRM. It could be that when you mark the deal as one, you have to answer the questions, and it won't put the case forward until those questions are answered. So that's one way of sort of not thinking about it, letting automation handle it, and that's one tip. I had one other tip, but I forgot it while I was talking. Maybe it will come up later
you
on.
might think of it in a sec, but that's helpful, certainly for myself and the audience. So we've talked about quite a few useful ways that you can utilize your CRM. You can work out your ideal client profile, you can hit target accounts, look for lookalike accounts. Are there any other angles that businesses that want to scale should be thinking about utilizing their CRM that we haven't yet covered?
Well, we covered so many topics. It's really difficult to pinpoint another one. Well, maybe one fundamental thing a fundamental thing we didn't necessarily discuss deeper was the fact that if sales and marketing are going towards the same target accounts, it would be beneficial if the sort of cooperation between sales and marketing would be very much aligned, and they would be working on the same system. Sometimes you have marketing automation systems separate from the CRM, but it should be, marketing people should be able to see what's happening with the cases, so that they get a continuous feedback loop. So maybe it's not only for salespeople. It should also be utilized by marketing.
It can be quite tricky, right? Like you mentioned there. So if you've got various marketing automation tools, whether you're using like a outbound sequencer, or you're nurturing existing clients, or you're sending these email feeds, or whatever the heck you're doing on marketing, whether it's outbound, inbound, whatever, because not every tool integrates with the same CRM, do they? Not every tool speaks to each other. Not every tool has a simple integration or an API or something like that. How do you kind of manage those kind of things? Because doesn't it piss your team off when they've like got to flick between like 5-6 platforms every day, and then sales are trying to do their job and you're telling them to check this, and those kind of things can be a headache, right?
Yeah, I saw one piece of research that said that salespeople use on average 17 tools, something like that. But obviously it could be 20 or 5, whatever. I think if salespeople would prefer to use only one tool if necessary, or if even that. But I would really think about the situation where you're at. I mean, we used to use HubSpot for marketing automation mostly, and Pipedrive for CRM, and then we migrated to HubSpot. What we're thinking about was sort of the sort of future. So how do we want to run things in the future? So these things take time, but if you have tools that don't integrate well, but there are means and ways of getting the data from a system to another. But if you want to sort of start from scratch in one way, like combining everything to one, and I would really think like what would be the ideal scenario in a few years, and what kind of problems can we run into unless we take good care that everything is well planned and thought through. For example, if you're not collecting some data field or property or some data point from the beginning, it can really hurt you in the future. I don't know. An example would be when a customer visits your website or prospect visits your website. So make sure you're measuring that as well, and that's in the CRM, so you can see like how many times they've been there, on which pages. So there's two options: either glue them together or start from scratch and really think what would be the sort of ideal scenario in the future.
Yeah, because it's a painful thing, right? If you've got to move CRM and you've got quite a big size team, if you've got a lot on your marketing, your sales, and various other departments that are using it every day, and then you decide that you want to shift all the data, like it's not a quick job, is it? So it's something like you say, you've got to plan very carefully and make sure the thing is as seamless as possible.
Yes.
Cool, man.
It's not easy. It's not easy,
yeah.
but if you want that, if that's your goal, then I think that and you want to grow as a company, I think the benefits really outweigh the effort in the long run.
Nice one. Well, look, Aamer, really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your ideas, insights, and some really useful tips when it comes to CRM, utilizing data, being data-driven, and using it all to your advantage of your marketing and your sales force. So with that said, please do share more about how everyone tuning in can learn from you, connect with you, and anything you'd like to point our audience to.
Excellent. Hey, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Aamer Hasu, and obviously, if you want to try out Vainu, we talked a lot about company data, enriching your CRM. Obviously, Vainu helps with that a lot, so you can go to vainu.com, and we do offer a free trial. So if you fill the form, we'll meet with you, we'll set it up, and you can see how the data would work for you yourself.
Nice one, sir. And we'll put all of those links on the show notes over at businessgrowth.marketing. And with that, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, man. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Or if you're on the audio podcast, a quick rating or review goes a really long way. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one for more actionable, no BS, B2B marketing tips, grow your business and grow your revenue. Cheers for tuning in.